What's up, family, and welcome to another Pastors and Leaders Coaching webinar, where every week we get together to walk with you through some topic related to church systems and leadership and how you can move the needle forward. Uh, for the last couple of weeks, we have been on what I think has been an exciting journey. The feedback from you all has been amazing as we have discussed the technology of gates. You all have really grabbed a hold of this. And so this week we're going to continue in that. And so we're still giving everybody a chance to log on for just a moment, but we're going to go into that some more. So I want you to do me a favor really quickly, wherever you're watching from. I just want you to drop in the comments the name of your church and your city, just so we can connect. Maybe there's somebody else who's watching, who's in your city, who's in your area, or maybe just somebody who wants to connect with you. And if nobody else does, I want to connect with you. So take a moment, drop that, but also go ahead and tag some of your team members, right? Whether that be somebody on your church staff, or your ministry team, so other leaders, or your pastor. Go ahead and tag them in this video, especially if you're watching on Facebook. Tag them, let them know that you're watching, alert them to the fact that this is happening, because maybe there's going to be some value for you and for them here. So, look, this week, oh man, we are diving. I think we're on part three of the technology of gates, and we've started this series a couple of weeks ago, and we really started diving into a few things. And really, what we've done is that we're using Nehemiah as really a framework for how he catches this burden and he goes in after he hears how the people are doing. He hears that the walls are torn out, the gates have been burned, all these different things. His heart is moved. And as his heart is moved, he begins to move towards Jerusalem. And here's the reality. Nehemiah shows us a picture of an Old Testament apostle. He shows us this Old Testament apostolic leader who takes on the responsibility and the challenge of being sent from a place of comfort into a place of need. And that's one of the signs of apostolic leaders. The apostolic leaders take on the challenge. They have that entrepreneurial spirit. They have that daring spirit, that thick skin, that toughness that just makes them a perfect fit for going into tough places and tough situations. And we talk about how Nehemiah goes in there and he focuses on rebuilding. And many times we talk about Nehemiah rebuilt the wall, and he did rebuild the wall, but he didn't stop there. He rebuilt the gates, but he also rebuilt all of the different structures of Jerusalem. He rebuilt their economic structure, their social structure, their spiritual structure. He did all of those different things. And so we've been talking about that. All right. Quick recap of what we've covered so far. We started with the question, what are you building, right? It's important that you're clear about what you're building because you've got to be able to articulate to the people who serve with you, and for the people who are going to follow the vision that God has given you as a leader or as a team or whatever it is. You've got to be able to communicate that well because people cannot execute what you cannot articulate. If you can't put it clearly into words, it's going to be hard for them to put it into action. We also talked about how vision gives us direction, right? And more specifically, one of the things that we've wrestled with, hey, good to see you. One of the things that we've wrestled with is this idea that without clear vision, anywhere you end up can seem right and anywhere you end up can seem wrong. All right. If my goal, again, is to travel north to Canada, then I've got a marker that tells me when I'm moving in the right direction. If I start seeing signs for Florida, I know I'm going in the wrong direction. But that's what vision does. Vision lets people know when they're getting off track. If you don't have a clarified vision, people can be off track and still keep moving. People can be going in the wrong direction and just keep on going, right? But then another thing is when you don't have clear vision, it's hard to celebrate wins. You don't know when it's time to celebrate. You don't know when things are going well. You don't know when things are moving in the right direction. So you need that clarity of vision that directs you and pushes you in the right direction. Here's another thing that's so important. When you have and you teach people the reason for doing what we do and what they do, then one of the things that that does for you is that it gives them what they need to make it through a difficult season. Because here's the reality, man, as we serve in the church, we're going to go through difficult seasons. Difficult seasons are unavoidable. They are a part of life. They are a part of ministry. But rather than seeing people walk away and seeing people quit, when we have clear vision, we help people see why we ought to be inspired to keep on going and keep moving forward. All right. And so, as we talk about gates, Nehemiah goes through Jerusalem and he's rebuilding these gates, right? We see him doing this. And what we see is that these gates are divine defense measures. They're divine defensive measures. Wherever a gate is supposed to be, when it's not there, there will be a gap. There will be a gap in the wall. And for many churches, there are gaps in the wall because there's no plan, there's no process, there's nothing in place to help people take a next step. You know, this Sunday we had 4 men come up and say, "Hey, we want to be a part of this church. We want to give our lives to Jesus, and we want to take some next steps." And I'm excited about that. Why? Because I know we have the gates in place to help process those men and help move them along their discipleship journey. Because discipleship is in a moment. Salvation can happen, you can receive your salvation in a moment, but discipleship is a process. And if you want to make disciples and not just saved people, then you've got to have processes in place. And so we talk about gates, we're talking about these defensive measures that help us monitor what goes in and out, who comes in and out, that make sure that people aren't coming into the front door and walking right out of the back door. And so we've got to make sure that we cover the gaps, that we mind the gap. It's a picture from the tubes or from the subway system in London. And it's just a warning that says, hey, look, I know you're stepping off this platform onto a train, but there's a gap there. There is a space in between where you are and where you're going. And if you're not careful, you will lose some things in the transition. And man, I can't tell you how many churches have lost so much in the transition. How many churches have seen things completely fall apart in the transition as they go through transition? COVID was a transition. Pandemic was a transition. Leadership changes are transition. This change from a almost completely physical church to a phygital church. That's this blend between the physical and the digital. That's a transition. And if you're not careful, you lose people in the transition. And many churches are losing people. And so a part of our heart, like Nehemiah, is we want to come in and say, okay, look, how can we help to correct this? And so a part of it is understanding the divine patterns, is that one of the major divine patterns that we see in creation is that God forms a thing and then he fills it. He forms it first, then he fills it. He creates the grass and the vegetation, then he creates the cow. He creates the water, then he creates the fish, because he knows that things that are coming for the future have things that they will need to be created in the present. God didn't create fish and then say, oh, snap, I forgot to make water. No, he did things in order. And so as we pray for God to fill our churches, as we pray for God to send new people, as we pray to God to do all these different things, we've got to form the environment first. And that's whatever you're asking for. If you're asking God to send you new disciples, you need to create an environment where disciples can be made. You're asking God to send an increase in your finances. You need to create an environment where disciples can be made. You're asking God to send you new volunteers. You need to create an environment where disciples can be made. All of those things are a product in the church, in the Christian church, are a product of discipleship. Our budgets are a reflection of our discipleship, right? They should be, anyway, a reflection of our discipleship. Our volunteer pursuit should be a reflection of our discipleship, all those different things. And so as we walk through these gates, and we're taking the gates of Nehemiah and translating them to the 10 systems of a healthy church as a part of our process that we help our partners walk through. As a part of that, this is how we work through that, and this is how we navigate that. All right. So we're talking about this idea of understanding these gates. All right. So we talked about the first three gates, the foundational gates, right? If we were starting a new church this week, what are the three foundational things we were focused on? And we talked about worship planning, we talked about assimilation, and we talked about evangelism. If you missed that episode, if you missed that training, you can go back and watch it. It's here on the page, so you can go and see it. But we talked about those three foundational systems. Those are what we call gather systems. Those are the systems that are really focused on gathering people, on pulling people in, bringing people from outside the church to inside the church, helping us to reach and keep people, right? We want to reach them, but we also want to keep them. We don't want to just reach them and they come in for a minute and they go right out the door. We want to reach them and we want to keep them. So those are our gathering systems. This week, we're going to talk about three more systems. We're going to talk about our growing systems. These are the systems that are really focused in on helping people grow, right? Because again, sometimes we're going to talk about church growth, but if you grow the people, the church grows as a result. And so we want to focus on these systems that help us grow people. All right, so let's talk about it. Our fourth gate is the valley gate. And this valley gate was said to be an isolated gate. It was this gate that had the most space between it and the other gates. And it is indicative of the fact that all disciples have these valleys in life that they must walk through. And so, what we want to do to combat that is we want to create our small group system or our community system, right? It's how we foster relationships within the church. You've got to make sure that you're preparing the people you lead to do life with other people who believe as they believe. One of the great travesties I see in the church is that people come into the church and get saved, and yet they spend 90% of their time with people who look like who they say they don't want to be anymore. And I'm not saying we pull ourselves away from the world. I'm not saying that we completely isolate ourselves from our family and our friends and things of that nature. But I am saying that we've got to be focused and intentional about spending more time with people who believe what we believe. And so as a result, we need to create a system. We've got to build the Valley Gate by creating a system to help people build relationships with other people. And so for us, this is what we call our community or small group system. Now, this can come in many different forms. As I said before, it can be small groups. It can be creating and developing small groups that meet all across the city or that meet at the church on a Wednesday night. Whatever it may be, is creating these groups where people get together, they gather together for the purpose of encouraging each other, spending time together, studying the word, fellowship. However you design it, there's a million different ways you can do it. You can do small groups where people use a curriculum that you find on a website. You can use a sermon based small group where you take the sermon notes from that Sunday, turn them into questions, give them to the people in the church, and allow them to discuss. You can do a Sunday school class, right, where you have people meet on Sunday morning before service and they break off into groups and they meet that way. You can do a hybrid where you can do a Wednesday night service where you teach for 15 or 20 minutes, then put people in groups and let them talk for another 30 or 40 minutes and discuss and work out. One of the points is this, is that you need a space and a place where you get to see how people are digesting the word. So many times in church, communication is one way. And when communication is one way, you don't know if people have the clarity that they really need to have, right? You don't know if they understand you or not. You don't know if they really got what you were saying or not. You really don't know. And the reason you don't know is because they're saying amen, but they might be completely misinterpreting what you said. So development often comes through questions. That's why Jesus was such a great leader. One of the things he did is that he constantly asked great and amazing questions. And so you want to create a space where people can ask questions, where you can ask them questions and hear their answers, right? And it may not be you personally as a senior leader, but you can put people in groups, right? And I know sometimes in some of our churches, one of our issues with groups is trust, right? And again, if the trust factor is low, then do them together. Have a Wednesday night gathering and have all your groups just break out in the sanctuary and make little circles, right? And put a leader on the leadership team in each group to have them to be there just to make sure that things are going well, however you do it. But the point is this, you've got to help people make relationships. Pre-pandemic, a person needed to make 7 friends in order to stick at a church. 7 people who they know by name and 7 people who know them by name. And so you've got to help people intentionally make relationships and significant relationships in the church in order to continue to facilitate their partnership in the church, right? So you've got to build the Valley Gate. This is the place of relationship where we get to build the relationships that help us walk with people through the toughest seasons of their lives. Another thing that so many churches see is people who are part of the church for a moment, and then the moment things get tough, they go away. In the parable of the sower, we see these different types of grounds. And one type of soil, it springs up quickly, but it dries out because it's shallow. And in that particular parable, we see that we just, we go to celebrating the good ground, the good ground. Well, here's the thing as a leader, you have all 4 types of ground in your church. your goal is not just to go find a good ground in your church and then start investing in it. But your goal is to figure out a strategy for how to deal with all the types of ground. And so when you come across that shallow ground, somebody who comes in and you want to avoid them springing up quickly and then fading away, then you need a strategy to start to dig out the rocks. And that's one of the things they did. It was shallow because there were rocks underneath. And so a good gardener would go in there and start pulling out those rocks. They would start tilling the soil. They would start going, what's beneath the surface? And as they start pulling that out, then they give that soil the capacity to be good ground. Because it has the components of good ground. It's just got stuff blocking it. And so this is what your Valley Gate will do for you, your small group strategy, your community strategy. It will help you begin to till the soil of people's hearts to really help them become disciples of Jesus Christ. All right, so that's the Valley Gate. Number 5 is the Dung Gate. This is the gate where in Jerusalem all the trash was dumped beyond this gate. They took the trash and they went out and they dumped it out here and they put it in that gate. And we equate this to our volunteer system because I believe that volunteerism and volunteering is one of the ways that Jesus rids our hearts of the trash of selfishness and so many other things that the world has placed on the inside of us. And so you need a strategy to help people actively serve, to make sure that people know what serving opportunities are available, to make sure that your ministries are organized to the best of your ability, so that things drive forward. One of the things that we talked about earlier is the assimilation system. I think that was number 2. In system number 2 in assimilation, one of the things we encourage you to do is to do a new members class. And we love this. As a matter of fact, we build the online and in-person new members class for all of our core and premier partners who partner with us in our program. And one of the things that we coach them to do is to create a document that helps people connect their gifts with a specific ministry in the church, right? And so we help them connect directly by saying, hey, look, if you have this gift, here is a potential area where we think you'll fit really, really well, right? So we make that clear to them. We make it really simple where they could serve based on their gifting. And we do that for a couple of different reasons, but one big reason is this, is that, I've learned that when people do something because I call them to do it, when it gets hard, they come talk to me, right? They want to come look at me. They want to come, they want me to deal with it. They want me to address it. They just want to step back or they need a break or whatever it is. But we try to help people realize that God called them to ministry, that we didn't call them to ministry. We just affirmed the calling that God put there. And so that's what you want to do in this system is that you want to create a process where you help people discover their gifts. And as you help them discover their gifts, you help place them on a team where they can make a significant difference. Now, I will say this when I say volunteering, oftentimes in the church, our mindset and our thinking process can stop at, ushers and greeters and things of that nature. But you need to be thinking about it. Maybe it's not immediate, but you need to be thinking about more significant ways that people can be involved. How can people be involved through the church and making a difference in the community? How can they be involved in all these different ways, and you want to be thinking about how people can have a real difference. The people in our church or the people in your church, you want them to know, hey, look, you're going to impact the local schools. We're going to have serving opportunities for you to impact the local schools through our church. We're going to have serving opportunities for you to impact people in this community through our church, right? You want to think about, yes, you want to make sure that you have strong teams internally, but you also want to think about how people can make a real difference. I'll never forget hearing the story of this woman who went to a church and she was serving at that church for a number of years. And she was a huge giver. And one day her and her family decided they were going to leave and go to a different church. And so after they noticed in the budget that they had lost a significant giver. This was somebody who was giving well above 5 figures a year in the giving. And so after noticing that they had lost, and it's sad sometimes that the money is really what gets our attention, but we'll talk about that in the next gate. But it was they noticed that she was missing, and so the pastor, when he found out, he decided to give her a call, and he wasn't watching the offering, but it was one of those things where finance alerted him, hey, look, we lost a really big giver. So he calls her up and he says, hey, why did you leave? And she says, well, um, she says, it just felt like you all didn't think I had capacity for real ministry. And he said, well, what do you mean? I know I saw you every Sunday. You were serving. You was a lobby, blah, blah, blah. She says, yeah. She said, you guys made me an usher and a greeter, and I did that for several years, and I appreciate it. She said, but I'm a VP of a major national corporation. She said, I lead for a living. And here in the church, it feels like I'm just giving something simple that just anybody can do. And I really want to use my skill set in the kingdom. And the pastor, really what he discovered is that this woman was a VP for a huge major communications company in the US. And she was relegated to just being an usher. Right. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being an usher and being a greeter and serving in all those roles. We need to do that. But there is something to be said for discovering the people in the church who have a greater capacity, who have a deeper capacity to do more, to be more, to step into more. There's something to be said for that. And so you want to make sure that you're finding ways and spaces for people to serve. I ask you this question. If a CEO walks in your church on Sunday and says, I want to use my skill set to help build the kingdom, what do you have for them to do? And right here, I want to deal with something that we'll deal with in a later gate. We'll probably get to this in our next coaching session in our tier 3 systems. But a part of why we struggle to empower people is because many times we are insecure as leaders. Because, John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, in that an organization can never go beyond the leadership capacity of the person in charge. And same thing for a department or a ministry, it gets stuck at the leadership level of the person in charge. Are you investing in your leadership in such a way where you can be comfortable empowering people to do what they're called to do? And I know this is a hard thing. Even as we talk about this right now, this is something that I am working through and wrestling through on my own, is making sure that I'm in a posture and a position where I can empower strong leaders around me to really lead. Even at the time of this recording, I'm getting ready to release some major components of the church from my hands. I mean, look, can I get an amen from a leader in the chat? I'm going to release some major things from my hands so that some great leaders around me who have great capacity can lead forward. All right. But here's the point. You need a system for how you recruit leaders, how you train leaders, which is why for us, all of these 10 systems are connected. In our assimilation process, we're feeding our small groups process, and we're feeding our volunteer process. We're telling people as they come through our class, hey, let's get you plugged in. Let's get you plugged. As a matter of fact, as a part of our class, every week, the people who are coming through our new members process, they get to meet a different group of people. They meet our senior leadership team, which is like our elders. They meet our staff. They meet our ministry leaders, and they meet our small group leaders. They meet a different group every week. And when they meet them, we're giving them the opportunity to sign up to be a part of something right then. Before they're handed off from that assimilation team, they're plugged into those other places. And so you need a path, you need a strategy for that. And of course, I know some of this can sound overwhelming, but these are all things that we do for people who are a part of our process. If you're a part of our program, you're a part of our process, we help you install and put all of these things in place. All right. So here's the last one I want to talk about tonight: the fountain gate. This is the gate that they use to access the pool of Shiloah before entering the temple. So this fountain gate really represented this life-giving space. And so for us, this is our generosity system. This is where we create a focused strategy to develop generous givers in the church. I don't know if you know this, but people just don't wake up generous. People aren't just born, oh, I'm just going to give and just give, give, give. Generous givers have to be developed, but generosity is a part of discipleship. And so as we disciple people, a part of how we disciple them should be us helping them see how generosity really does connect them to the heart of God and partner them with the ministry of the church and of the kingdom. And so here, what we're talking about is simple things like helping people see how to make steps. So one simple thing here is that you want to teach on giving twice a year, right? And you want to give a biblical message on giving to help people see exactly what it looks like to be generous in the kingdom and in the church, right? You want to make sure that you lay that out for people, that you give it to people, that it's there, that it's available to them, that you teach them that. Another thing that you want to do, that I would suggest anyway in this system, is that you find a way to help people with their own generosity, right? Again, all these systems are created. So one of the things that we have done and we have tried and we have piloted in our church is one of our small groups is around helping people manage their finances. Our finance director, who is an accountant, is leading a group helping people manage money, helping people know how to manage their finances more consistently, right? And so we're doing those things so we can help people take next steps and help people move to the next step in their finance. And there are several other things that we do, but the point is this: you need to help people move on this journey. You need to help people move from non-givers to first-time givers to regular givers to systematic givers to estate givers, right? You need to help people make that journey to move from where they are to be fully developed as givers within the church, and you need a system for that. Just hoping that it happens is not enough. Just hoping that one day people are going to wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to start giving is not enough. You need a plan, you need a strategy, you need to make sure that you start putting something together to help people take those next steps. You know, all of this is a part of what we call the church funnel, right? Where we move people from engagement to leadership. And along the way, you encounter some of these different systems, right? You encounter some of these different systems. And we're working on a resource now to put into a graphic where they encounter these different systems as we walk along. But it fits into an even larger part where we look at the 10 systems that we think are important to the future and to the health of any given church. If you want to know more, you can use either of the ways on the screen. You could text us at that number on the screen. And if you just text us, if you text to get this document, if you text AI 2022 to that number on the screen, you'll get this entire presentation, and you can get to know it, and you can connect with us there. I'll text you. You can text me back at that same number, or you can just go online to our website, simplesystems.cc. There, you can see all about our program, how we work with churches, the different levels that we work with churches on, and how you can plug in and be a part. You know, I will say this: one of the things that's unique about us as a company is that, you know, this is a business, but it's a ministry for us. And because it's a ministry for us, and it's really a part of how I execute the apostolic call that God has placed on my life, we are very selective in the people that we work with. And so, one of the things that you have to do to work with us, you have to apply, is that you have to apply and you have to gain approval to be a part of our program and to join in with us. We have to do a call together to make sure you're a great fit, because quite honestly, some people they believe that the big decision they need to make is to join a program, which is true. Deciding to join a program and join our program is a big step. Because when you decide to make a step like that, what you're saying is, I don't want things to stay the same, right? Because you know, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're gonna keep getting what you've always gotten. Things are going to stay the same. As a matter of fact, I would argue that things are going to get worse because that's just the natural order of things. Things don't get better along. Many things like this, when it comes to systems and so on, they erode over time. Even when you install systems, you got to maintain them. And so making the decision to join the program is huge, but you can't stop there. We want to work with people who are serious about doing the work and who find joy in doing the work, who are excited about doing the work, right? If you think leading the church is this drawn out, like, oh, I don't want to do this, and that, then you're not going to be a good fit for us. Because when we get on that call and when we meet with your team on a monthly basis or however often we meet, there is an energy that you need to bring to the table so that we can work together and be excited about getting this done. All right. So listen, if you want to take a next step in your church system and you want to start moving forward, then make sure you go ahead and text me at that number. I'll text back and forth with you. We can put together a plan to set up a call where we can chat, me, you, your leaders, whoever else, and we can talk about and start putting together a game plan to help you move forward. All right. Listen, thank y'all for joining me tonight. If you haven't already, go ahead and like, share, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to this channel. If you're watching on Facebook, go ahead and like and share this, tag somebody in it so that somebody else can see it. You know, another passion or the leader, somebody who would be blessed by this. Go ahead and do that. And if this has been a blessing to you, let me know in the comments. I come back and I read these comments Let me know in the comments. I just want to hear from you that this was a blessing, that this has helped.